Hi, I'm Sandy East, and I am the PR person and do career pathways for the Gulfport School District. And today I am going to read Chrysanthemum by Kevin Hinks. The day she was born was the happiest day in her parents' lives. She's perfect, said her mother. Absolutely, said her father. And she was. She was absolutely perfect. Her name must be everything she is, said her mother. Her name must be absolutely perfect, said her father. And it was. Chrysanthemum. Her parents named her Chrysanthemum. Chrysanthemum grew and grew and grew. And when she was old enough to appreciate it, Chrysanthemum loved her name. She loved the way it sounded when her mother woke her up. She loved the way it sounded when her father called her for dinner. And she loved the way it sounded when she whispered it to herself in the bathroom mirror. Chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum. Chrysanthemum loved the way her name looked when it was written with ink on an envelope. She loved the way it looked when it was written with icing on a birthday cake. And she loved the way it looked when she wrote it herself with her fat orange crayon. Chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum. Chrysanthemum thought her name was absolutely perfect, and then she started school. On the first day of school, Chrysanthemum wore her sunniest dress and her brightest smile. She ran all the way to school. Hooray, said Chrysanthemum, school! But when Miss Chudd took roll call, everyone giggled upon hearing Chrysanthemum's name. It's so long, said Joe. It scarcely fits on your name tag, said Rita, pointing. I'm named after my grandmother, said Victoria, and you're named after a flower. Chrysanthemum wilted. She did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She thought it was absolutely dreadful. The rest of the day was not much better. During nap time, Victoria raised her hand and informed Mrs. Chudd that Chrysanthemum's name was spelled with 13 letters. That's exactly half of the letters there are in the entire alphabet, Victoria explained. Thank you for sharing that with us, Victoria, said Mrs. Chudd. Now put your head down. If I had a name like yours, I would change it, Victoria said as the students lined up to go home. I wish I could, thought Chrysanthemum miserably. Welcome home, said her mother. Welcome home, said her father. School is no place for me, said Chrysanthemum. My name is too long. It scarcely fits on my name tag, and I'm named after a flower. Oh, pish, said her mother. Your name is beautiful and precious and priceless and fascinating and winsome, said her father. It's everything you are, said her mother. Absolutely perfect, said her father. Chrysanthemum felt much better after her favorite dinner, macaroni and cheese with ketchup, and an evening filled with hugs and kisses and parcheesi. That night, Chrysanthemum dreamed her name was Jane, and it was an extremely pleasant dream. The next morning, Chrysanthemum wore her most comfortable jumper. She walked to school as slowly as she could. She dragged her feet in the dirt. Chrysanthemum, 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 she wrote. She even looks like a flower, said Victoria as Chrysanthemum entered the playground. Let's pick her, said Rita, pointing. Let's smell her, said Joe. Chrysanthemum wilted. She did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She thought it was absolutely dreadful. The rest of the day was not much better. During nap time, Victoria raised her hand and said, A chrysanthemum is a flower. It lives in a garden with worms and other dirty things. Thank you for sharing that with us, Victoria, said Mrs. Chudd. Now put down your head. I just can't believe your name, Victoria said as the students lined up to go home. Neither can I, thought Chrysanthemum miserably. Welcome home, said her mother. Welcome home, said her father. "School is no place for me," said Chrysanthemum. "They said I even look like a flower. They pretended to pick me and smell me." "Oh, pish," said her mother. "They're just jealous." "And envious and begrudging and discontented and jaundiced," said her father. "Who wouldn't be jealous of a name like yours?" said her mother. "After all, it's absolutely perfect," said her father. Chrysanthemum felt a trifle better after her favorite dessert, chocolate cake with buttercream frosting, and another evening filled with hugs, kisses, and parcheesi. That night, Chrysanthemum dreamed that she really was a chrysanthemum. She sprouted leaves and petals. Victoria picked her and plucked the leaves and petals one by one until there was nothing left but a scrawny stem. It was the worst nightmare of Chrysanthemum's life. Chrysanthemum wore her outfit with 7 pockets the next morning. She loaded the pockets with her most prized possession and her good luck charms. Chrysanthemum took the longest route to school possible. She stopped and stared at each and every flower. "Chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum," the flower seemed to say. That morning, the students were introduced to Mrs. Twinkle, the music teacher. Her voice sounded like something out of a dream, as was everything else about her. The students were speechless. They thought Mrs. Twinkle was an indescribable wonder. They went out of their way to make a nice impression. Mrs. Twinkle led the student in scales. Then she assigned roles for the class musical. Victoria was chosen as the dainty fairy queen. Rita was chosen as the spiffy butterfly princess. Joe was the all-important pixie messenger, and Chrysanthemum was chosen as a daisy. "Chrysanthemum's a daisy, chrysanthemum's a daisy," Joe, Rita, and Victoria chanted, thinking it was wildly funny. Chrysanthemum wilted. She did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She thought it was absolutely dreadful. "What's so humorous?" said Mrs. Twinkle. "Chrysanthemum," was the answer. "Her name is so long," said Joe. "It scarcely fits on her name tag," said Rita. "I'm named after my grandmother," said Victoria, "and she's named after a flower." "Well, my name is long," said Mrs. Twinkle. "It is?" said Joe. "My name would scarcely fit on a name tag," said Mrs. Twinkle. "It would?" said Rita, pointing. "And," said Mrs. Twinkle, "I'm named after a flower, too." "You are?" said Victoria. "Delphinium Twinkle. And if my baby is a girl, I'm considering Chrysanthemum as a name. I think it's absolutely perfect." Chrysanthemum could hardly believe her ears. She blushed, she beamed, she bloomed. Chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum, chrysanthemum. Joe, Rita, and Victoria looked at Chrysanthemum longingly. "Call me Marigold," said Joe. "I'm Carnation," Rita pointed. "My name is Lily of the Valley," said Victoria. Chrysanthemum did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She knew it. The end.
Thank you, Miss East, for reading the story Chrysanthemum. Now let's review. Who is the main character of the story? Our choices, our options are Mrs. Twinkle, Chrysanthemum, Victoria, and her mother. Well, I know that it wasn't Mrs. Twinkle. She was kind of toward the end of the story. I also know it wasn't Chrysanthemum's mother. She was very nice and kind, but she wasn't the main character. Victoria had a really big role in this story, but she wasn't the main character. The main character of the story was Chrysanthemum. What is Chrysanthemum named after? Here are our choices. A cute mouse, a tree, a book, or a flower. What is Chrysanthemum named after? Give you a moment to think about it. Great job. She's named after a flower. What is Chrysanthemum starting? Our choices are singing lessons, dance class, school, are sports? Well, the kids were on a playground, but I don't think Chrysanthemum is starting sports. And while she may like dancing, I know that there was no mention of dance class in the story, so I'm going to eliminate that. Mrs. Twinkle really enjoyed singing toward the end of the story, but I don't think Chrysanthemum was starting singing lessons. So the story begins when Chrysanthemum starts school. Good job. What is Chrysanthemum's favorite dinner? Here's our choices. Chicken nuggets with ketchup, French fries with ketchup, pizza with ketchup, mac and cheese with ketchup. This is going to be a tough one. There's a lot of good choices up there. But what is Chrysanthemum's favorite dinner? It's not pizza with ketchup. I don't even know if that sounds good. I love French fries with my hamburger, but that's not her favorite dinner. I think it's a hard choice. Chicken nuggets everybody likes, but no, that's not her favorite either. Her favorite dinner is mac and cheese with ketchup. Use context clues to answer the following question. We'll start with a picture. This is from the storybook. It's a picture of Chrysanthemum with her mom and dad. Her dad's reading a book. There's a table with something on the table. Let's see if we can get some more information from the story. Chrysanthemum felt much better after her favorite dinner, mac and cheese with ketchup. We were right. And an evening filled with hugs and kisses and parcheesi. That's a new word. Maybe you haven't heard before, parcheesi. So here's the question. What is parcheesi? Can you figure it out from the picture and the context clues in the text? What do you think parcheesi is? Excellent guess. Parcheesi is a board game. All right, we have another context clue that we're going to use to answer another question. So we'll start with the picture. There's a picture of Chrysanthemum at school with Victoria and Joe and Rita, her friends. So let's read this part of the story. "It's so long," said Joe. "It scarcely fits on your name tag," said Rita, pointing. "I'm named after my grandmother," said Victoria. "You're named after a flower." Chrysanthemum wilted. She did not think her name was absolutely perfect. She thought it was absolutely dreadful. Why did the author state Chrysanthemum wilted? I'll go back and I'll highlight it for you in our story. Why did he use those words? Think about a flower and what can happen to a flower. Joe, Rita, and Victoria were not being very nice to Chrysanthemum. They were kind of making fun of her name. And from the looks of the picture, Chrysanthemum was not very happy. She kind of had her head down, looking very sad, was not feeling very good about herself. Well, flowers, when they're not taken care of and watered and nurtured properly, flowers can wilt. And if you've ever seen a flower wilt, it starts just kind of slowly tilting over, wilting. Kind of the bud of the flower will droop over a little bit. And that's what happens when flowers are not taken care of. They don't get the proper water and nutrients, light, things that are needed. And I think that's kind of a good explanation for what was happening to Chrysanthemum. She was kind of feeling bad about herself, and she's kind of hanging her head down a little bit, maybe feeling a little unhappy. So I think that was a great choice of words to explain how Chrysanthemum was feeling and also kind of what she was doing. Good job. What was Victoria doing during nap time? So here's our picture. Children are laying on their mats, taking a nap, but Victoria is standing up. So what could she be doing? Let's read. The rest of the day was not much better. During nap time, Victoria raised her hand and informed Mrs. Judd that Chrysanthemum's name was spelled with 13 letters. That's exactly half as many letters as there are in the alphabet, Victoria explained. Thank you for sharing that with us, Victoria, said Mrs. Judd. Now put your head down. So what was Victoria doing during nap time? Here's our choices. A, singing a song to Chrysanthemum. B, making fun of Chrysanthemum. C, dancing for the class. D, reading for the class. Give you a second to make your choice. If you picked making fun of Chrysanthemum, you're right. It wasn't directly to her, but she was definitely still picking on Chrysanthemum's name. Good choice. Why did Mrs. Twinkle like Chrysanthemum's name? Here is the picture from the storybook. Let's read. My name is long, said Mrs. Twinkle. It is, said Joe. My name would scarcely fit on a name tag, said Mrs. Twinkle. It would, said Rita, pointing. And, said Mrs. Twinkle, I'm named after a flower too. You are, said Victoria. Yes, said Mrs. Twinkle. My name is Delphinium, Delphinium Twinkle. And if my baby is a girl, I'm considering Chrysanthemum as a name. I think it's absolutely perfect. So why did Mrs. Twinkle like Chrysanthemum's name? Here's our choices. A, it was fun to say. B, it has 13 letters in it. C, she always wanted to be a flower. Or D, she was also named after a flower. What's your choice? If you chose D, you're correct. Delphinium is also a flower, just like Chrysanthemum, and so Mrs. Twinkle was also named after a flower. Good work. What evidence does the author use to suggest that Joe, Rita, Victoria, and Chrysanthemum become friends? Let's go to the end of the story. Take one last look at it. Joe, Rita, and Victoria looked at Chrysanthemum longingly. Call me Marigold, said Joe. I'm Carnation, said Rita, pointing. My name is Lily of the Valley, said Victoria. So what evidence does the author use to suggest that Joe, Rita, Victoria, and Chrysanthemum become friends? They looked at Chrysanthemum longingly. I think they realized that they were making fun of Chrysanthemum's name and changed their mind, kind of became more friendly toward Chrysanthemum and really felt sorry for what they did and was trying to make it up to Chrysanthemum by also picking flower names that they could be called. So I think by the end of the story, Chrysanthemum was very happy with her name, thinking it was absolutely perfect.